So welcome everybody to our Community Legal Education webinar this morning. I'd like to start by acknowledging the traditional owners of the land that we're broadcasting from today, and the Legal Aid at the Legal Aid Office. We acknowledge the Turrbal and Yugara people, and we acknowledge them as the First Nations custodians of the land where our office stands and where we work to help disadvantaged Queenslanders uphold the legal rights in our justice system. I'd also like to acknowledge any First Nations people that are joining us today for this webinar and acknowledge the custodians of the land where you are from. I'd also like to acknowledge all of you that have joined us today and thank you for the work that you do every day, working with often the same clients that we work with. So much appreciated that you've taken the time to join us. So today's topic, how can Legal Aid Queensland help my clients? And we're very fortunate to have Katrina Smith here, who's
Hi everybody,
the Director of Information and Advice Services at Legal Aid Queensland.
Right.
Many of you may know Katrina already. I should introduce myself too. I'm Linda Richards. I'm the coordinator of the Community Legal Education program here at Legal Aid. So just a reminder, there's a little bit of housekeeping to start with. This webinar is for community legal education purposes. So it's a legal information webinar, not legal advice. So I guess just putting that out there at the beginning. And as I said, very fortunate that Katrina is with us today. Just a reminder, the webinar is being recorded and it will be available on our YouTube channel after the session. And all the information related to the webinars and our program is on our community legal education pages on our website. So yes. There we go. And the handouts, we've got a few handouts today. Fantastic. We've got a poster, a new poster that talks about all the services that we can help with and the services, some that we can't help with, but we would refer. So look out for that in the handout, and another really snazzy handout which gives people a really good understanding of our different services and thinking about it from a client problem perspective. So I hope you can all find those in the handout box. So a quick poll to start with, which, as you know, we like to engage with our audience and we like to find out who is with us. So just driving here. Okay, so our first poll, which region do you work in? Southeast Queensland, Far North Queensland, Regional Queensland, or outside of Queensland? So I really appreciate your responses and helps us get a sense of who's here.
It does.
So,
it always amazes me that comes in so quickly.
I know, that you're all there.
Responses right there.
So we'll close that off now and we should be able to share those results with you all. I hope you can see those. We've got 49% from Southeast Queensland, 19% Far North Queensland, 32% Regional Queensland, and none from outside of Queensland.
That's
so
good.
Yeah.
So we only give advice about legal matters in Queensland, so that's good. That's a good start.
Good start. Okay, so now I need to close that, I think. Now, we've got another poll. So this also helps us know who the type of work that you do. So I'll launch that one.
This just helps us target for you the information as we're going, because obviously we want to give you the best pathways, I guess, for your clients when you're working with legal aid.
So we do promote this session with community workers. So that's great to see. There's lots of community workers there. I can see the results coming in. Thanks very much. We'll close that one off now and share the results. So we can see 33% community workers, fantastic. Health workers, 7%, 17% financial counsellors, and 10% MP and electoral office staff. So fantastic, really happy to see that. And a number of other people joining us, perhaps community lawyers or community members. So thanks everyone for that. Okay, now last poll I promised before I hand over to Katrina. I would rate my knowledge of Legal Aid Queensland as high. Actually, I'll just launch that before good, as in you have some knowledge about legal aid, or you may not know a lot about us. I'm sure many of you are quite familiar with our services and refer to us regularly, so it'll be interesting to see what we come up with there. Okay, so that's looking like a good mix there. We'll close that one.
Lots of people seem to have some knowledge, so that's great.
Yeah, that's great. So there'll be lots more to learn today. Okay, so thanks for your participation there. I'll hand over to Katrina, and she'll take us through the session.
Thanks, everybody. That just really helps us because there are some slides that we might sort of go through a little bit quickly. Obviously, they're in the slide pack there for you, but if we've got the majority of people who know a little bit about legal aid, that just helps me to focus more on some of the, I guess, the information that is more helpful for you in your day-to-day interactions with clients and actually helping them get through to the legal services that they need. So what we're talking about today, and I should just introduce myself. So I'm the Director of Information and Advice Services at Legal Aid Queensland. What that means is that I look after our contact centre, or you might call it the call centre. So that's our statewide telephone service, and we have a variety of different services that come in through that contact centre, and we'll talk about some of those as we go forward. And I also look after our advice team. So we have a specialist team. There's about 16 lawyers who are employed at Legal Aid, whose job is just to assist people with legal advice. So I look after that team. And I also look after our prison service as well. So for those of you who need to connect with that, we won't cover that specifically today, but certainly if you want to call through to the call centre, we can give you some information. We'll talk about that as we go through. So I'm really here to just give you a pretty much a brief overview of our services and what are the things that we can help people with, and a little bit of information about what are the things that we can't help people with, because I think a lot of people have lots of legal problems, and as society becomes more complex, so do the legal problems. And it's a good idea if people can be very clear about what we can and can't help with. I think that just makes referring in a bit easier for everybody. How to refer to us, we're going to have a little bit of a chat about eligibility for legal aid. What does that mean? How do we work that out? Who gets a lawyer, who doesn't, to take them to court? Talk you through a little bit of the information that we've got available on our website, but there is so much information on there, isn't there, Linda?
Yes.
That it really is worth the time to maybe jump on there yourself at some stage. I know we don't have time, but if you're looking for something specific, we generally have it covered on our Legal Aid website. We'll do a little quick chat about how you might be able to interact with Linda and her team and get somebody to come out and do a bit of a targeted session for your staff or for your community. And then we've already received quite a few questions prior to the webinar going live, so we'll hope to cover all of those off, but I'm also very happy to answer questions as we go. So hopefully everyone knows how to answer a question, and
there's a question box. I think most people are familiar, and that pops up and we can see it. So
fantastic. Yeah. As much information as we can in this short. All right, so we've only got an hour today, and I do tend to chat, so Linda will keep me on track, and I really look forward to giving you as much information as we can in this short time. We thought what we'd do is sort of get through the bulk of things, me just talking pretty quickly, and then set aside the bulk of the session for actually going through some of those practical things that people really want to know.
Sure.
All right, so who are we? We are what we call an independent statutory authority. So that means that we are independent of government, but we are funded by the government. And while we don't necessarily consider ourselves to be part of the public service, we are certainly part of the wider justice system, and we do have a lot of interaction with the Attorney General's Department and the Justice Department around how we fit into the system. For those of you who are interested, we receive funding from the state government, and we also receive funding from the Commonwealth government, and we really only do legal work inside those funding arrangements. So if somebody has given us some funding to provide legal services on a specific type of law, and we'll talk about some of those a little bit later, then we do that. If we don't have funding, we don't have very many services available for some of those things. So it really is important for people to understand what are the things that we're funded to provide services for, and what are the things that we're not funded to provide services for, but we can provide some information, assistance, referral, and we'll go through those things. One of the things, and I always find this an amazing thing that happens, is that there seems to be some sort of perception that our lawyers are different to lawyers who don't work at Legal Aid. In actual fact, we are the biggest legal firm in Queensland, and we've got the most lawyers in Queensland working for us at Legal Aid Queensland. And all of our lawyers have exactly the same qualifications as lawyers who work for private firms. And in fact, in many areas of our work, particularly the criminal law practice, child protection, people from the private practice actually try to come and work for us because of the work that we do and the interesting cases that we have. So I think there is a bit of a perception sometimes that, you know, if you get a legal aid lawyer, they're not a real lawyer. That's certainly not the case. We are about 600 staff working across Queensland, and we've got 14 offices throughout Queensland, and many of our regional offices, and many of you will know this, also go on what we call the circuits out to some of the remote communities or more remote communities. What we do though, and people may not understand this, is because there is such demand for legal services in our core areas of work, we have lawyers who are employed by Legal Aid as full-time lawyers, and then we have a network of private firms that we call preferred suppliers who we actually pay to do legal aid work. So they're not employed by Legal Aid, but they do legal aid work on a sort of a contract type basis. And because of the demand, only about 25% of clients will actually get a lawyer who's employed by Legal Aid. Most of the legal aid work that is done by our preferred suppliers. And I think that sort of sometimes creates a bit of confusion for people too. So we'll talk a little bit about that as we go through as well. So our main role, our focus, our purpose for being is to help people who can't afford a lawyer with their legal problems. And that is what we are funded to do. Our funding requires us to focus our services on people who are financially disadvantaged. And our funding from the federal government, for example, says that 99% of our clients need to be people who are financially disadvantaged. So while we have a lot of services available to all Queenslanders, as we go through tightening down our services to who actually gets a lawyer to go with them to court and help them with their legal matter, we're really focusing down on people who are financially disadvantaged. So we've got many ways that we can assist your clients and you also. Obviously, any Queenslander is entitled to call Legal Aid for information about a legal issue they're having. That's available to everyone. And those phone services that we have is through that contact centre, that's all the call centre that we talked about a bit earlier. We quite often, just because of the volume of people and because that call centre is a statewide call centre, a lot of the legal advice that we give to people is actually over the phone. So what we'll do is people will call in, we'll work out in the call centre, the contact centre, what the legal problem is and do some triage. If we work out that somebody needs some legal advice, then we'll actually book them in for a telephone appointment with a lawyer. And that's the bulk of the way that we deliver our legal information and advice is over the phone. We do have capacity for face-to-face appointments, particularly in our regional offices. Obviously, that was impacted a little bit with COVID, but we're pretty much back to normal across the state. So we do have face-to-face appointments available in all of our regional offices. We do have the capacity to video conference. So that's not a problem, and we do a lot of video conferencing with people across the state as well. And obviously, since COVID, our technology has really improved that experience for people, so that's great.
And Katrina, just to interrupt quickly, is there much of a wait for the advice booking? So if people call up?
No. Well, if it's general legal advice, at the moment we're running our advice clinics so that you can actually get an appointment the next day. So most people who ring up will get an appointment the next day. We always do have also some appointments reserved for what we determine to be sort of urgent matters. So if when the client's calling through, we realise that there's some urgency, maybe they're in court that next day, maybe there's some urgent unsafe situation that needs to be dealt with, then we do have a little pool of urgent appointments that we can book people into. So that's not a problem. There may be a little bit of a wait sometimes for face-to-face appointments, but it's generally not more than a week. Yeah,
that's great.
The other big service that we have and that many of your clients will be in touch with is our court-based duty lawyer services. So we have duty lawyer services in most courts around Queensland. And again, those duty lawyer services are sometimes our in-house legal aid staff. Sometimes we contract private lawyers to do that. But the duty lawyer service is there for people who require it in court on that day. Obviously, though, if any of you have been to any of those magistrates' courts, sometimes particularly on a Monday morning, it can be very busy. So we'll talk a little bit later on about what are the best ways that you can help your client prepare for engaging with a lawyer. And really those duty lawyer services, because there are so many people to see, it's a very quick service. So there's some tips there we'll give you about helping your client if you're going to send them off to the duty lawyer. Bulk of our work, most of what we do is what we call criminal, family and civil. So that's people who've been charged with an offence. In our family law work, that includes child protection matters, family violence matters. And we also have quite a bit of civil law. So what we mean by that is employment, anti-discrimination,
debt,
consumer debt. Yeah, that's right. So there's a big civil law.
Human rights now.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. So we've got a civil law practice as well, and we call that our specialist service. So there are some specialist clinics available there too, and that'll be actually a good idea to do a webinar on the civil, on the civil specialist. So we'll have a look at that.
That's a good idea.
All right, I think I did mention to you that we've got our Legal Aid Queensland website there, and really it has a whole lot of information for you, and also information that you can actually print out for clients to give to them. So we also have on there what we call our information resources. So that's our fact sheets and guides. And you can actually order those direct from the website if you feel like there's something there that might be helpful for you to have a lot of copies there to hand out to people. So, for example, how do I apply for legal aid, or, you know, what do I do if I've been charged with a criminal offence? Those are very handy guides for people, for those people who can access that type of material. Okay. Oh,
that's right. Yep.
There we go.
Oh, there's the poster.
Here's the poster. So now this poster should be attached to your information. Yes. And this is really our guide, our quick handy reference for you to talk you through, or just as a quick little thing that you can look at about what can we help with and what can't we help with. So you'll remember I said that we only help in the areas of law for providing legal representation. That's a lawyer going to court with someone where we've got funding. And you can see that bottom box there, we can't help with. So you can see that we're not actually funded to help any companies or businesses or clubs. We know there are a lot of legal issues for people in that area, particularly small businesses. We don't have any funding to help people. There are other services though who do have funding. So what we can do for people who fall into that we can't help with box, it's still probably worth their while giving us a call, because we'll be able to say, look, that's something that we can't help with, but here is the specialist service, or here is somebody else who might be able to help you. So we do give referrals for people in areas of law that we don't actually provide legal representation for, but it's probably helpful for you. A big one that comes through for us a lot is will making and powers of attorney. So we don't actually do any legal representation in that space. It's something that other legal providers can help with. But if people are wanting to get a lawyer from Legal Aid to help them with that, particularly if they're involved in an estate matter, for example, that's not something that we would help with. And the way that we say that is that's not something that we would fund.
Yeah.
Okay, we don't have a grant of aid available for that. So if you hear people coming back to you saying they said that they don't fund it or they don't have a grant of aid for that, that's what they're meaning. Yeah. And I think if anybody wants to order some of those for their office, Linda,
you can do that from our website.
Yeah, Linda will talk you through that a little bit later. Yeah. All right, so I think we've talked really through legal representation. When we're talking about legal representation, we mean lawyers who are going to take your client on as a client. They're going to represent them. They're going to do all the paperwork for them. They're going to go to court for them. They're going to speak for them in court, and they're going to be their legal representative. For a client to get a lawyer to be legally their legal representative, we do have, I guess, a bit of it's a test really, isn't it, Linda? Because we've got unlimited need, and we've only got a bucket that's so big. Limited funds. Thank you. Yes.
Yeah.
Limited funds to do that. So we do provide representation in most courts, and you'll see over here we're doing representation in the family court. But thinking back to what we said about financially disadvantaged, the people who are going to get the lawyers to go to them with court actually have to show us that they're financially disadvantaged. So we do ask people to give us information and evidence about their financial circumstances. And many clients find that a little bit tricky. Sometimes it's tricky because they don't like people to know that personal information, and we understand that. Sometimes people find it tricky because actually getting together those documentation, that information can actually be tricky for some people. So we'll talk about that too a little bit later. We also provide legal representation for mediation. So hopefully most of you are familiar with mediation. That's where people get together and try and work out their legal issues without having to go to court. And our big program there for mediation and negotiation is family law. So in our family law matters, we're actually required to try and get people to work things out before they go to court, unless it's urgent or there's an emergency. So most people who apply for a lawyer to represent them in family law will end up getting what we call a conference grant, which is a lawyer to help them try and negotiate before going to court. And that is sometimes a bit of a surprise for people, because they feel like, you know, they want to go to court and they've got this matter that needs to go to court, but everyone's pretty much required to go to mediation first. So that might be a good thing for you to just remember about the process for your client, is that very few people go straight to court. We also do some mediation and negotiation. This is probably for our rural and regional and remote people on the webinar today, for rural producers with debt-related issues. So we can actually help with that. If they're in a dispute with their bank or their lender, we've got a specialist service for that. We have 2 lawyers, that's all they do. So again, if you've got a client who needs to access that service, probably the best thing to do is ring through the contact centre, and we'll be able to put them in touch with that specialist service.
And they're called the Farm and Rural Legal Service.
Yeah. Right, we have a special line for our First Nations clients, and we do try where possible to have that line staffed by First Nations staff. So if people need that specialist service, that culturally appropriate service, that's the number for them to call. We also have what we call the Natural Disaster Legal Helpline, and that is for your clients who are experiencing legal issues if they've had a property that's been damaged by climate, basically. And what we normally find in these natural disaster things is that we're probably not there as the first responders. People generally get, you know, quite a bit of help in the initial aftermath, but then many people are left with problems with dealing with their insurance company, getting appropriate payouts, those kinds of things, we can help with that. So if people want to call through on that number, that 1300 number, we also have a specialist lawyers available for that natural disaster legal help as well, who are experienced in those insurance matters. So that's a great service for any of your clients who are experiencing those types of issues.
And just a little plug there too, we do have a
podcast.
A new podcast. Yeah, it's part of a Law for All series, and we do have a interview with Paul Holmes, one of our senior civil justice lawyers, around dealing with insurance and preparing for natural disasters as well, how you can help your clients prepare.
And that's on our
website, on our CLE pages.
Great.
Yeah.
I've mentioned the Family Law Duty Lawyer Service. So what you might find is that you have clients who, for whatever reason, that mediation didn't work out, or alternatively, their issue was urgent and they did end up going straight to court. If that's the case and they're there without a lawyer, we have a Family Law Duty Lawyer Service available there. And so they can actually talk to the person, give them some information and advice. They can help them with some of the court forms. And again, depending on how busy they are, we don't guarantee that they'll be able to stand up in court for the person and speak for them. But we do try where we can, and particularly for those clients who are particularly vulnerable. In some of our courts, we have what we call the Faz Service, which is a multidisciplinary service. So there's actually social workers attached to the duty lawyer as well. So if you've got some particularly vulnerable people who might need that service, we can help with that too. If you ring through the call centre, we'll organise that. I'll get that. Legal Service. And I know that before the seminar, we got a lot of questions from people about how to actually assist clients with domestic and family violence. Now, we are actually doing a special series in May on domestic and family violence and legal help. So I probably won't touch much on that today, except to say that we have a lot of services available, and that goes from having social workers available in some courts to help people with their forms and safety planning and those kinds of things, through to representing people at court for their domestic violence order. So we have a lot of services available, and we also have that duty lawyer service available as well. So if you have a client who, is experiencing those issues and needs some help, we also have specialist advice clinics. So our specialist domestic and family violence staff actually run specialist advice clinics, and we can book your clients in for those as well. And we prefer to try and book people in with those specialist lawyers where we can, although that general team that I talked about before, our advice team, we call them the First Advice Contact Team, or FACT. They can assist, but we do try and put people in touch with the specialist service where we can. All right, we've talked through legal information. I'm not going to talk much about that, except to say that our people who are answering those phones, they're not lawyers. They are very highly trained. Many of them have been here for a long time. They know a lot about the legal system. They know a lot about our services, but they can't actually give legal advice. So they can give legal information, and they do that for people. They can point people in the right direction for referrals. But if people do need legal advice, then we will actually go and book them into an advice with a lawyer. Now, we've done just here some general slides for you about, and it's basically just a revisit of the poster, but if you don't have the poster, you can have it here in the slides. Just a bit more depth about what we do and don't help with. In terms of relationships and children and family law matters, we've got a special program. We received a whole lot of extra money from the Commonwealth this year to help people work out property matters where it's not economically worth them going to court and fighting. Like the lawyers' fees are going to be more than what they may have to divide or what they might get at the end. So we've got a special program happening on that at the moment. So if you've got some clients, and we do find this a lot, that we've got clients who have really important property law matters, but they're finding it difficult to do themselves, or they're finding it difficult to get a lawyer to do it for them or to pay the lawyer, we do have that specialist program. And that program is basically will help them through a mediation to see if we can get a property outcome for them. So it is worth getting your clients to give us a call. Just remember, we've got that financial disadvantage focus, and many people who call us actually have property above what we would consider to be financially disadvantaged.
So Katrina,
I see that. I saw that question, Fanny. I saw that
question around our definition of that, and I think that'll feed into the discussion about eligibility.
It will. So we're going to go on and talk about eligibility, and just so people know, we are very transparent about that, although it's a dense material and hard to get through. So on our website, we do very clearly say what our how much money people can earn before they're not eligible for legal aid, what they can have in terms of their property value and those kinds of things. But it does change from time to time. So it can fluctuate a little bit, but generally speaking, people who are on Centrelink will be eligible for legal aid. People who are earning sort of less than sort of that $1,000 a week mark will be eligible for legal aid. But it does depend on what else they own. And in some circumstances, it can also depend on who is available to provide them financial support. So we'll talk about that in a minute. Got a legal information there on cars and driving. We've got a specialist clinic here for drink and drug driving and traffic offences. Got a lot of people calling who've had their licence disqualified and who need some assistance to get that licence back, particularly for their employment. So we do have a specialist traffic clinic that we can book people into, and again, just access that by calling 1300 65 1188.
That's the number.
That's right. So criminal justice, I think most people are pretty familiar with the criminal justice area. We do have a specialist team that works with young people and the justice system, and they are all across the state. So we have people working all across the state there, assisting young people who've been charged with a crime. This is just a bit of a general sort of.
And I think a lot of these topics correspond with the website and our legal information topics on the website.
That's
so
right.
They're easy to search on.
That's right. This is an area, this National Disability Insurance Scheme is an area that we're starting to do a lot more work in as well. So we have some specialist lawyers available to assist people who are having difficulties with their NDIS matters, and we know that that's quite a lot of our clients and potentially your clients as well. So we do have specialist lawyers there available to assist with that one as well. Okay, I think I've been through pretty much the lines on our.
I think this one might be worth checking, Katrina.
This one
highlighting, questions about an application you've already submitted. So I know sometimes as workers and support workers, you've worked with the client to submit an application for legal aid, and you're wondering where it's at. Has it been approved? What's the process?
Yes.
So there is a specific number that people can call.
It's this number, and we will be able to look up the matter and talk to the client about where it's at. Have we had a look at it yet? Do we need some more information from the client? What we find a lot is that we have said to the client, and we normally send them a letter to say this, we haven't got all the information that we need to work out if you're financially eligible. So we need you to send us some things, and we'll send the client a letter to tell them that. But sometimes that is still difficult for people to find or to understand what's required. So that is the number that people can call, and we'll actually have a bit of a chat to them, read the letter out to them, have a talk about what does the letter mean, what do they actually need to bring in, and if there are some people who are particularly vulnerable and need some assistance to actually get some of that material available, we do have a specialist in-house social worker who can actually help people go about getting that material and doing those things. So we don't refer to that social worker from external sources, but what we do is when people pick up on any of the lines that somebody needs a bit of extra help, we send them through to that client assistance service, it's called, and we have people there who can help them. So they can help them fill in the form if they need forms, they can help them obtain documents if they need documents. So it's worth giving a call if you've got a client who's received what we call an information letter. If we send an information letter out to a client and we don't hear back from them, then we'll just close their file, and that's a bit of a problem because their legal issue obviously hasn't gone away. And we could solve it pretty quickly if we were able to just have a chat with them and explain to them what's required. So if you do have a client who's got a letter from us and they're not understanding what needs to happen, that is your number to call. And just, I may as well just do that now quickly about our application process. So our application process, we have an application form. It's available on the website. People can apply for legal aid in basically 3 different ways. So one way is they may, for example, go and see the duty lawyer at court, and the duty lawyer will say to them, hey, I think you need to do an application for a grant of aid so that you can have a lawyer represent you moving forward, because all I can do is look after you today. The duty lawyer service is a very limited service just on the day. So the duty lawyer may say, look, I think your matter is pretty serious and you're going to have to come back. You're going to need to apply for legal aid. Give me a call, or I will help you. We can make an appointment, or I'll give you a form, have a little look at it, and then come back and see me. So people can apply for legal aid through the lawyer who's been seeing them. The other way that people can apply for legal aid is filling out the form and sending it in to us, or handing it in at one of our front counters at any of our regional offices. And the form is long and it can be a bit confusing. So people at our front counters should be able to help if people need some assistance with filling in the form. But unless we get the form, we won't be able to give the person a grant of aid. So it really is important that application form gets filled in correctly. And on the back page, can I just show Linda, there are some very special boxes which sometimes get missed by clients, which are what we call the consent boxes. So it's on here on the final page on page 14. If clients tick all these boxes, particularly our criminal law clients, we'll actually be able, this box here gives us permission to get information from the police that we need to do our assessment. And what we find is a lot of people don't click this box, and then we've got to chase them up for material. So if you ever are assisting someone with a legal aid form, make sure they sign this back page. They've got to sign both bits, and they need to tick this box to say, yes, we're able to get the information from the police. It just makes it much easier for them. We don't need to go back to them for more information, and it just is a much smoother process for them. Now, having said that, our grants people receive, sometimes they can receive between 400 and 600 applications a day. So there are a lot of people who are applying for legal aid, and it can take a little while for those applications to be assessed. Many of the calls that we get through on our grants inquiry line, that's this line here, questions about the application you've also already submitted, are people calling up to see what's happened. I haven't heard anything, what's happening. And while we do try and turn around applications within sort of a week or 2, sometimes it does take a little bit longer. And anybody who hasn't given us the information that we need at the start is going to add a couple of weeks to that time. So it really is, if I can give you one tip about assisting your clients, it's really if you can help them or give us a call so that they can get legal advice and get some assistance to fill in the form, because that will really just make a much smoother process for them. All right. Now, you can also refer people to us directly. We have a form here on the Contact Us form. We do get a lot of Contact Us forms coming through. Those Contact Us forms come through to people in the contact centre, the call centre, and they'll actually action whatever needs to happen there. So sometimes we'll send the person an email back with the information that thinking about. Sometimes we'll send them back and say, hey, listen, we think you might need a legal advice appointment. But if you have someone that you want to refer through, you can send through that contact us form, or clients can actually jump on there and contact us directly, and we'll get back to them as well.
And I think we do get to eligibility. You're probably wondering where the eligibility.
Yeah, that's all right. We'll get there. We're still handing in our forms, and these are all the places you can hand them in, or you can send them in to us, and we accept them via the mail as well. Here we go. So, as I said, and if you try and think of some like steps in terms of legal aid, so the most legal work that we do is information. Then we sort of move down and we do advice. Then we move into mediation or duty lawyer if people need that, and then we move into representation. So anyone can access our free information service and get referrals and information. Once we move past that information phase though, then we're starting to look at our financial eligibility. And we're really looking up, there's an eligibility test, which is, we call it the means and the merit test. And this is very confusing for people and for clients, and actually sometimes for the lawyers as well. It's a two-pronged test. So we're looking, first of all, tell us about your financial situation so that we can work out whether you're eligible for aid. And as I said, the actual amounts vary a little bit, but generally speaking, if you've got anyone who's receiving any kind of Centrelink benefit, they will be eligible most likely. Anyone who's not receiving a Centrelink benefit of some description, and that could even be just family tax benefit, it doesn't matter, then we're going to need to talk through, well, what exactly is the income that's coming into your family? How much money is coming in? What do you own? What do you owe? What do you have access to? So that we can work out if you hit our levels. And we can probably go and have a look at the means test if we get enough time. But the means test looks at financial eligibility, but then we also have what we call a merit test. So the merit test looks at, first of all, is this something that we actually fund? So is this an area of legal aid that we actually have money available to pay for a lawyer in? And many people apply for, so if someone applied for a grant of aid for a lawyer to help them with the wills matter, they wouldn't be eligible for legal aid because it's not something we have money to pay for, okay? If they apply for a family law matter, for example, and this is a big, a lot of people apply for family law and don't fit the merits test. Because what happens is that money that comes from the federal government, there are conditions attached to that. So the conditions that are attached to that may be, for example, that we're going to focus on funding victims of family violence. We're going to focus on funding representatives for children. We're going to focus on funding people who are needing assistance with their parenting matters, rather than focusing on people who need assistance with their property matters. So those merit tests, some of them are attached to the funding and there's not much we can do about that. Some of the merit tests are our own sort of internal policies around, for example, if we've got to decide between two people who seem to have, you know, very similar situations, how do we actually do that? And our merits test actually guides the grants officers to go, okay, well, this person may have a better chance of success because, for example, the children are living with them and they've got, you know, evidence or issues that we can assist with, as opposed to a person who maybe is in a different situation, maybe hasn't seen the children for a long time, or maybe there's not really that much of a difference between the two parties about what could happen, and this should be something that they should actually be able to work out together. So we actually do a little bit of analysis around, well, what do we think is going to happen here? And let's focus our money on the people who really are going to need some assistance because of their particular circumstances, and we'll try and focus our money there for legal representation. And this is a very tricky area for people, and obviously many people, and this is the feedback that we get, and I totally understand this, when they get this letter from us saying, you know, your matter is not worth funding from a public interest perspective, that can be very, very challenging for people and quite devastating for people. We do have an internal and an external review process for people who are told they're not eligible for legal aid. So we do have a process where people can say, hey, can you look at this again? You didn't understand my situation. Here's the things that have happened, or here are the things that you didn't get. Here's the information that I wasn't able to give you. And we do have a two-step process. The first process is where we get a senior person to look at that initial assessment and make sure that yes, it was right, or no, it wasn't right. If we're still saying the person's not eligible for legal aid, then we do have an external panel of lawyers who are not employed by legal aid who actually look at them again. So there is a process for people. We call it the review process. I would highly recommend for you, if you have a client who hasn't been eligible for a grant of aid, particularly in that family law area, and it's not about means, it is about merit, then you really need to probably assist them to do a review, or we can. So call through on that special grants number and we'll be able to talk you through exactly what you need to do for that.
So just a time check.
Oh, sorry.
We've got 15
oh,
minutes.
see, I do.
So it'd be good
okay.
to have some time for questions.
All right.
Soon. We do have
a poll. I'm just going to answer this.
Yes, let's answer that. All right. Have a go, everybody.
Have a go, Mike. No, there is, just because one person gets legal aid, the other person can still get legal aid. But what happens is we can't have both of those people having a legal aid lawyer, in-house legal aid lawyer. So one person will get a lawyer in-house at legal aid. The other person will get a lawyer who's one of those private lawyers that we contract, who we call our preferred suppliers. And we've got a whole lot of things behind the scenes to work out who gets what. But just because one person gets legal aid, the other person can still get legal aid as long as they're eligible and they meet the means and the merits test. If you have a job, you can, no, not true. But if you do have a job and we're still going to give you legal aid, we may ask you for a thing called a contribution. And that's where we say, hey, you've got a little bit of money. Can you give us a little bit of money to help us fund your representation? It's nowhere near the amount of money that you would pay if you had to pay a private lawyer. But some people do get a grant of aid, and it's like a condition on their grant of aid that they have to actually pay this thing called a contribution. So again, again, those things can be waived in certain circumstances. You can appeal those and review those. So if you've got a client who is asked to make a contribution, it's worth getting them to give us a call on that special grants number, and we'll talk them through what that means. But we are technically not allowed to start work until they've actually paid that contribution, or at least made an arrangement to start paying it off, like, you know, $5 a week or whatever. Okay, we do community legal education. This webinar is part of that program. Linda runs that program. We, on our website, have a contact us form as well for you if you would like someone to come out to your event, to your organisation, to talk through legal aid and what we can do for you. And we're very happy to do that.
Absolutely, yes. Yep. Our lawyers they like a lot of role variety, so they're often in court or on the phones doing legal advice, but the opportunity to go out and interact with the community face-to-face is something a lot of our lawyers really enjoy. So.
Yes.
But there is sometimes some capacity issues.
There are. Yeah. All right, let's talk through some questions. While you're looking at those ones, I'll just go through some of the ones that we had prior to the webinar. So this is a question which is, how often can a client apply for legal aid, and is there still a fee for this client? There's no fee to apply for legal aid. Even if you are with a preferred supplier, we don't charge to apply for legal aid. So if your client is with a preferred supplier and they're asking for a fee to apply for legal aid, that's probably something that you should give us a call about, because there is no fee. Clients can apply for legal aid as often as they like. In the criminal space, if they're charged with a new crime, they can apply for legal aid again. In the family law space, and this is one of those sort of merit tests, we do put some merit tests in there around times length of time between your last application and your new application, and some things in there around have things changed since your last application. So it does get a little bit trickier in the family law area, but there's no limit on the amount of times that people can apply for legal aid from a technical point of view. Someone's asked, I may not be able to make the webinar, but I'd like to receive the PowerPoint slides and a link to the YouTube video. If that's okay, we'll do that.
We've got our webinars email
that's right.
address.
This question was, what is the best legal advice to give a parent who has had a Department of Child Safety enter their life, and how soon should they try and seek legal assistance? I would say ASAP. Those child safety matters can move very, very quickly. There's a massive power imbalance there between the department and your client. People need legal advice and legal assistance straight up, even in that early intervention phase where we're not technically in court, but the department are asking people to do things. We would be saying anyone who's involved with the Department of Child Safety needs to get in touch with us as soon as the department is in touch with them. And we fund most child protection matters. We will fund all the way through to final hearing. So there's no difficulty there most of the time with grants of aid. So I would say get in early, get in straight away, put your legal aid application in. Even if they're not actually in court, it will probably end up heading that way at some stage. So get some early advice about what they need to do, and we've got many services available in that child protection space to help you. And I think we've probably even got child protection coming up on one of the webinars at some point in time.
Absolutely.
We had a lot of questions, as I said, about supporting women who are experiencing family or domestic violence, and please tune in next month. But again, I would say we've got a lot of services across the board. We've got a lot of entry points. We have a regional referral service in straight to our specialist domestic violence unit. And if you need some help with a referral, just get onto the contact us form and we'll get someone to get back to you and help you with that. And
check out our resources online as well. There's a lot of resources about stepping people through the application process for a DV protection order.
Yeah, that's right. Now, this one is interesting, and it's information on how we can best support people in the community to reassure them that legal aid will give supported service through a legal matter. So we do have, and we probably need to spend a whole slide, really, isn't it?
Yeah.
A whole seminar on what we've got available to assist clients to engage with us. But one of the things that I wanted to just quickly talk through, if we've got time, is some things that you can do to support your client when they're trying to engage with us. And I think it's really important for people to understand, and I'm sure you all do, that, you know, getting legal advice about these issues can be really confronting, and it can be very emotional for people. One of the best things that you can do for your client is to just really help them prepare for that initial advice interview with the lawyer. They're going to have a very short period of time, whether they're at the duty lawyer service or even if they come to our legal information service and get a legal advice, it's like a half an hour they're going to have with the lawyer. So the things that I always say that are helpful is have the client write down their questions and bring their questions with them, even, you know, down to making sure that they've got a piece of paper and a pen to take some notes if they need some notes. We can help them with that if they need some notes and take it away. But I guess getting them into the mind frame of you're going to want to write some notes to take away, and you're also going to want to be very clear with your questions. What is the most pressing thing about this legal issue that you need to resolve today? What do you want to be able to do after this appointment? That's really important. Second thing is, if people need a support person to be with them when they're talking to the lawyer, that's not a problem, provided the client gives us consent. That's not an issue. And it may be that having someone with them to actually take the notes for them is a very practical way for them to get some assistance, because people quite often go away not really remembering what the lawyer said, not understanding what they need to do, not having a clear picture about what the next steps are. Now, our lawyers try very hard to actually put that in a way that people have something to take away and they understand what's happened, but we find quite often that people the stress of the situation means that it's hard to sometimes take in that information. So having someone to take some notes is great. Being able to come to the appointment focused and without young children is also really important, because it's hard to do two things at once, and we don't have any childcare facilities at any of our offices. So if they are able to make some arrangements for childcare so that they can come in and focus on their legal issue, that can be really helpful for them. Having a look at the information pages, if they're able to, before they come in, can be helpful too, because it can actually answer some of their questions so they can really focus on what the problem is. And I think probably the other big thing for people is to actually work through putting in that legal aid application. So if you're able to just become familiar with the legal aid application, or have some available, or at least know where to refer them to make that application and make it quickly.
And actually, there was a question on that, Katrina, about whether people could fill that in online or not. So,
I wish I could say yes to that.
Yeah.
Not yet. That's my dream. I was hoping COVID was going to help us to do that, but we're not quite there yet. It's certainly on our, what's that IT word, our roadmap.
Yes.
It's certainly on our roadmap, but it's not quite there yet. There is an application form online that is a PDF that you can use now, and that's been a big step forward for us in terms of technology, but you can't actually apply online. No.
Okay.
All right, let's go through some.
And not just on that too, about helping people prepare. Sometimes people have a client with them and they're wanting the worker to ring on their behalf. So just wondering, are they able to ring on behalf of the client, and do they need an authority to do that? Yeah.
So this is a big question that happens a lot, and because people are talking to us like they are to you about very confidential and private information, we take that privacy very, very seriously. So we have a sort of a two-step process around having someone else talk to us about the problem. And if you've got the client there with you, and the client gives us permission to talk to you, either with them there or without them there, that's fine. We can talk to you about that. But once we get to the actual legal advice appointment, we really want to see actually the person, because we actually need to probably get some information from the client that you may or may not have. You may be right across it, but there might also be some things that we need from them that you might not know. So we do like to have the person there. Once the person has made an application for aid, and I think this is where support workers can be very helpful. Obviously, it's a very bureaucratic process, and for lots of clients, that's difficult to navigate. So if you think that it would be helpful for your client for you to actually be doing the talking to legal aid about their application for them, and they're happy with that, they can actually sign a thing called an authority to say that. We put it on our file, and then we can talk to you without having to talk to them. But we do need that written authority if you haven't got the client actually with you at the time. So if you've got the client with you and you've got them there and they want to hand the phone over to you, or they want you to talk in the appointment, that's fine. But without the client, we will need that authority.
Okay, and that form is on our website, isn't it?
I believe it is.
For workers?
I believe it is, yeah.
I'm pretty sure it's on our CLE pages, so I'll check that. Yeah.
Thanks.
Yeah.
And if a client actually then gets a grant of aid and they've got a lawyer, and again, this happens, we sometimes have clients who want their support person, and it may be their worker or family member or whatever, to actually deal with the lawyer, then you'll have to fill in another authority then for the lawyer to actually talk to you instead of the client.
So we're running pretty short on time now, but I can see a few more questions. One last quick one, I think. Can Legal Aid help with NDIS application review processes?
Yes is the short word, but it's got to get through to a particular stage in the process. So all of those internal sort of processes need to be done, but we do have quite a bit of information on our website about that NDIS process and when we come into the picture, but we've only got a very limited bucket of money for that, and that bucket of money comes with special conditions, which is basically all of those disability support workers and the disability advocates are funded to do a particular part of the process. We're funded to do like that end bit where you're really going down the line of doing some court proceedings. So yes, but probably need to get a little bit of advice about whether we're going to give representation, because we only give representation there in limited circumstance. But if you want to call through, or your client wants to call through, we can book them into the specialist clinic and someone can talk to them about what we can do for them and where they're at. So we can give some information and advice, but that representation is very small.
And I think there's a few questions about accessing some of the specialist services, but I think the main answer to that is the 1300 number is the first point of call. And then
we've put a lot of work there to training our CIOs so that they can triage and identify the legal issue and put the client in touch with the right bit of legal aid. And I really see those frontline services, and this is the bit that I'm responsible for, as really trying to help shield our clients from the red tape and the bureaucracy. Like, we try and do that for the client to get them to where they need to be. And for some particular clients, they need a bit of extra help with that, and we're happy to help with that. Someone very kindly said, yes, the authority is on the homepage.
Great,
thank you so much. That's great. I see there, do you have a separate phone line for mental health advice, particularly for TAs? Main number, phone the main number. We do have 2 separate mental health specialist teams. We've got one specialist team that helps people who are in the tribunal. We've got another team that helps people who are in the mental health court. We'll organise that. Most of those people are going to be eligible for a grant of legal aid. So we may not put them through for advice. We may just organise for them to start getting an application for aid sorted.
And then just one last question, Katrina, about the application for aid, and what, if all the information is correct and everything is there, what is the general turnaround?
Now, it just depends. And it's so, we normally say sort of 10 working days is where we aim to be. But if there's something urgent and we know it's urgent, we can sometimes turn things around urgently. And that 10-day period can blow out a little bit sometimes. If, like, for example, when we had our, even our 3-day lockdown recently here in Brisbane, really meant that there was a big load of applications who came in on that first business day, and that does blow things out a little bit. But we aim to get them all sort of sorted within 10 business days. And I'm very sure that all of you are out there screaming and throwing things at the screen saying, I've never known a client who got it in 10 days. It does happen. But obviously there are some that go a little bit awry, and they're the ones that need to be calling through on the grants inquiry line. If your client's put in a legal aid application and they haven't heard anything back in 10 working days, that's when they need to be calling that number and saying, hey, what's happening, so that we can have a look at it and just make sure that everything is moving along, that they haven't been sent an information letter but they haven't received it yet. So we do sometimes have some difficulties with addresses and snail mail and all of those kinds of things. So if they haven't heard within 10 days, definitely give us a call, but probably if they can give us that 10 working days, it will probably be sorted by then.
Fantastic. Well, thank you everyone for joining us today. I'm sure there's still some questions that we may not have answered, but I'd encourage you to email through to our webinars at legalaid.qld.gov.au email address, or to the CLE email address. And I think there was a few questions I saw there too about where to find our podcast, where to find our videos. So to check out our community legal education pages, if you search that on our website, you'll find the link to all that information. And so this webinar will be available also. We'll put that up on our YouTube for any of your staff that may have missed the session. And if you would like one of our staff to come out and meet with your team there, or a group of support group or group of clients, we're happy to do that. So just find the online booking form and we'll be able to respond to that. So, and just a reminder about all our fact sheets and guides are available to order free of charge on our website as well.
And I'm just going to take a minute to do a free plug on another service that I looked after, which is the Your Story Disability Legal Support. We have a specialist legal service lawyers available, people available to take calls from people with disability, their supporters, advocates or carers who might want to know a little bit more about the Disability Royal Commission, how they might engage with that commission, how they might make a submission. We're really keen to help people with a disability, people who are supporting people, advocates, workers, to actually make sure that that Royal Commission gets all of the information it needs to make some really important changes in that area. So Your Story is what it's called. There's a link on our Legal Aid website, and you can call us anytime, 1800 771 1800.
Great.
I'm happy to come and talk to anyone about Your Story too.
And actually, we will run a webinar on Your Story in
and the Disability Royal
Commission. So
right.
Thank you very much for
everybody.
joining us, and thank you, Katrina, for presenting today. I really appreciate your time. So thanks everyone, and I hope you can join us for our next webinar in DV month in May. Okay, thanks everyone. Have a great day. Bye. Bye.